Welcome to 108 Contemporary. This exhibition, by design, is by two incredibly skilled and visionary glassworkers, Kayla Ulmer and Ryan Kepler. Our craft is inspired by Kepler's use of patterns in his blown and cast works, and the use of cane in traditional glassmaking. What happens to a pattern when the surface changes shape? Let's find out. Follow along. In this kit, you'll find moldable plastic pellets, also known as thermoplastic, a silicone baking cup, a craft stick, your instructions, and you'll also need some hot water. I've put mine in a carafe to keep it hot since I'm not close to a sink or a microwave, and also I have a bowl to catch any excess since, again, I'm not close to a sink. I need at least one permanent marker. I'm using two bold, intense colors. Any dark or bold color works best. I'm going to try using two colors. I can say from experience that the metallic markers don't work well. There are also other ways to add color to thermoplastic, but we're trying to do this as budget as possible, so permanent markers it is. I need scissors, and for my flat surface, word of caution, not recommended to use thermoplastic on wood or soft absorbent surfaces, or even like a plastic plate. I would recommend using something that it is not going to stick to. I have a silicone mat here, but a baking sheet, like a microwave safe glass surface would also work. I just want to make sure that whatever I'm rolling my thermoplastic out on when it's hot and moldable, that it's not going to stick to permanently. All right, let's get started. For our Ryan Kepler inspired design, the first step is to color some of the plastic. I want to pour a small amount of the plastic pellets into the silicone cup. I'm going to use just enough to cover the bottom and add hot water to the cup and wait a minute for the pellets to become transparent. If the pellets do not become completely transparent, then my water needs to be hotter water. And now we wait. Time lapse. All right, you might have noticed that I added a little hot water to my bowl just so that the pellets that were underneath other pellets, especially around the edges, could get heat from the outside as well. And now I'm going to pour the water out of the cup. And because I don't want to burn my fingers, I'm going to leave my pellets in the cup while I squish it around just to mold them together. Ooh, there's still going to be some water in there, and I'm going to try to press as much out of it as possible. So just squeezing. I'm going to go quickly because the plastic tends to cool fairly fast, and as it does, it's going to get harder and harder. So it's still transparent, it's a little wet, but I'm going to move my bowl to the side, and it should be of a dough-like consistency. You can also use your craft stick to help with this if it's still too hot to touch. All right, now I want to pull or roll it into a thin layer on my surface because I am going to wait for it to dry and cool completely, and then I'm going to color both sides. So you'll know when it's dry because it'll be white again. It started out white, it becomes transparent when it's ready to be molded and transformed. And because I'm going to have to repeat this process, I'm not really worried about it being a consistent thickness. I'm just pulling it out as flat as possible. And, oh, I can even do this right now. Cut it in half so that I can color 1/2 blue and 1/2 yellow. And if you're really impatient, you can even put the plastic into a fridge or run it under cold water. But it's already becoming less transparent. So now, once again, I have to wait. Time lapse. Now I'm ready. It's translucent because I pulled it so thin, but it'll be good for coloring. And while I'm going to color the whole surface, I don't have to be super accurate because after this, I'm going to cut it up into small pieces and repeat the process. If you are using more than one color like I am, you'll have to do that melting process with each separate color. You don't want to mix them into the same water even, because there's going to be a little bit of bleed from the marker into your hot water. It's going to happen every time. So if you use more than one color, my advice is to switch out your water and your colors each time. Now to make it super saturated, I'm going to wait until the permanent marker has dried and then turn it over and do the other side as well. Doesn't take too long. This plastic is not an absorbent surface like paper or cloth. So I do need to let it dry before I flip it over and before I put it back into water. We've done another time jump. I repeated the process of making colored plastic because I decided I wanted more of the cane that we're about to make. So we are in the step of making cane. Now in glass blowing, cane can be made a couple of different ways. It just means a long colored rope of glass. However many colors the glass blower wants to use, or how twisted or intricate, complicated the cane is all up to the artist. So this is up to you. If you've ever made kind of millefiori clay before, this is a similar technique to that if you've used kind of polymer clay. And yes, I'm gonna have to chase some of these around. That is the nature of the game. The reason why I'm cutting them up is both so that they will fit back into my silicone cup and so that if there are any parts that are thicker than others, it still melts to the same point. Since I can't see as easily whether it's completely transparent or not, this will help me to have completely moldable colored plastic. So when I finished cutting this up, I will meet you with my hot water, my bowl, and the baking cup. Let's go. I'm now ready to make cane. I have my cut up yellow and blue plastic. I used about 1/3 for each color. And then I have my remaining 1/3 of my plastic pellets to make my cane. The process will go as follows. I have to work quickly, but I'm going to melt the yellow and then roll it into thin ropes about the same length as my craft stick. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the blue. And then I'm going to melt my white pellets, and I'm going to roll it into a much thicker log. And while it's still transparent, roll it onto my alternating yellow and blue so that I have a core of white plastic and then surrounding alternating colors. Now, I have to work fast and I have to cut it before the white pellets fully dry, which means it's not going to be entirely circular or perfect, but I have my little kid scissors, so I've got to do it while it's still soft. All right, I'm going to get started. Here we go. Time lapse, begin. Now that I have my cane prepared and cut, with mostly still alternating. Now that I have my cane cut and prepared, I tried my best to make sure that the colors were still alternating, but since the goal is to distort them, imperfections are part of the process. And now I'm arranging them so hopefully I get a single layer. So I've got to massage that a little bit. But to make sure that it doesn't just mush into green, I am going to use my craft stick to act as a gentle disbursement of the hot water. And now I just have to wait until it's all melted again. But instead of mushing it this time, as soon as I see transparency, I'm going to dump out the water and then gently tip it over onto my surface and flatten it out. From there, I can shape it kind of however I want. I can make a cup by draping the silicone cup over just to help stabilize it, over the little cup that the pellets came in, and then, oh, stray pellets, oh no. And here's an example of a cup I made. I can shape it into something I can wear. Here's an example of a cuff I made with blue, orange, and pink. Here's another version. Both of these were made with this same technique of having a center core of white plastic. And this cuff, clearly I enjoy making these cuffs. I like how translucent they are, which speaks to our inspiration of Ryan Kepler's art. This one I made by simply twisting 2 ropes of color together and then twisting that around the larger rope of white and then flattening that out with a rolling pin, which I didn't use a rolling pin. I used my water bottle. All right, that's looking pretty transparent. So I have my rag at the ready as well. Ooh, still hot. Just trying to boop, 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 boop. Get as much water out as possible. And then turn it over, flatten it out. And from here, I can start shaping that plastic. Why don't I make another cuff to show you how I did it? Ooh, those distorted patterns are already really lovely. If I want it to be a specific width, then I could place rulers on either side and roll it out between them. But because I want this to be a little bit more of an organic shape, something a little more interesting, I'm gonna leave these lumps and bumps. I'm gonna grab my water bottle again to roll it out as thin as possible. I could just pull it, but I'm gonna try and make this even, do my best. Because again, I want it to be as thin as possible. All right, the fact that it's sticking a little bit tells me that it's starting to cool, so I can start to shape it. Now this is definitely longer than my wrist, so to add some visual interest, I am going to make some waves just in the center here. Pulling and pushing and pulling and pushing. So the overall line of the piece right now is still fairly straight, but I've got this cool alternate wavy pattern in the middle. Again, distortions on distortions. We're really trying to use our inspiration, right? And to make sure that this starts to dry with this C shape in mind, just for a little bit. I'm gonna set it up like this, but ultimately I'll have to remove it and then start to shape those cuffs while it's sitting on its side. Because this is so thin, it won't stand up on its own right now, but it's getting there. It's getting to that point. If you are impatient and you want your piece to dry faster, you can always shove it in the fridge or run it under cold water or give it an ice bath. All right. Because this happened so fast, this should be enough to get that cuff shape. And then I, as it dries, like to flip it one side to the other so that it's not completely leaning to one side and it can mostly sit on my wrist. Oh, well, I'll wear this one. So cute. Right, time's up to when it's dry. And done. I think it came out pretty cool. And it's interesting how some of the plastic retained this alternating color here, whereas in other cases it became really streaky, and it's almost green entirely, but not quite. We still have some of that white peeking through. And what I like is that it still has some translucency. So we're still getting that idea of glass work as inspiration. I would love to see what you made with your thermoplastic pellets and Sharpies, how you distorted the patterns, what choices you made, how you got extra creative with it. Please tag us at 108 Contemporary on all social media, and we'll see you for the next craft kit. Bye.